First things first, I obviously appreciate everybody that comes to watch these videos. Everybody that pops in the channel. Bills fans especially, of course. But definitely love it when opposing teams fans view these videos. Whether it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the whole thing, I don't care. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Love it even more when you pop in the comments. Love it even more when you talk a little trash in the comments. So I thought it would be fun if we read some of the comments from last week's video about the Bills and the Commanders. This guy, Washington leads the league in QB hits, my dude. Good video, though. Okay. A lot of good it did them. Here's a guy who was a good sport about it. Commanders fan here. Hey, you said bad weather. Who do you think that favors? I said, hey, I don't know if it's going to be bad enough to really affect either team. It was crappy, but whatever. He said, hey, thanks for the feedback. Hope the game is fun. 30s for each team. One team reached the 30s. And I made that joke. And he was a good sport about it. Appreciate you. Another one. The Bills are getting older and played out. Commanders' core are all coming into their prime and have played together for 5 to 6 years. Commanders' D-line, then a gap, then second best D-line is Jets. 24-17, Commanders win. Almost nailed it. So close. Couple more here, basically stemming off of what that gentleman said. Washington D-line is better than Jets D-line. Second best? LOL. I just replied, yeah, I might want to downgrade that. No replies from the latter, from the last couple there. The one guy who asked me about the weather was, like I said, a good sport about it. What does a debate about whose line is better matter to the Bills necessarily? I was just saying, from a Bills perspective, or a fan's perspective even, you're looking at this like, we struggled with the Jets D-line. Maybe we'll struggle with the Washington D-line, even though we didn't in the past, a couple of years ago, at home. It's possible, and then everyone has to chime in like, no, we have a better D-line than the Jets. Great. Well, why didn't it matter? Sure as heck didn't matter. 37-3, Bills. I mean, what was it, 13-0 at halftime, 16-0 at the end of the third quarter, and the Bills really laid it on thick there in the fourth. I think you could have seriously played that game for 10 quarters, and the Washington was not getting to 20. That has nothing to do with their D-line, obviously, but I think you play a game for 10 quarters, Washington's not getting to 20. I was there. I mentioned that last week, that I was going, and when I go to opposing stadiums, I'm not going to lie, I'm usually pretty antagonistic towards the other fans. I think in a fun way. I try to be fun about it. Like, if they give it back to me, I'm fun about it. But I like to just I like to push a little bit. Not like to the point where it's super contentious or would start a fight or anything like that. I'm not like that. Of course I'm not like that. I just like to get under people's skin just a little bit. I went to Baltimore last year. I made jokes about Lamar being a running back, and they laughed at me and turned around and they gave it right back to me about whatever. I don't even remember what it was, but I just told them, I'm like, hey, even during the game, maybe certainly after it, I remember speaking to them like, hey, thanks for being a good sport about all this. I had so much fun being here. Same thing really at Washington. I just kept making fun, not making fun, but making remarks about Sam Howell, 5th round pick, bet on talent. This is what Josh Allen is, stuff like that. The guy in front of me was not really having it, but he was giving it back to me at the beginning when Howell made a couple nice throws. I talk about this all the time. It's like the Bills' first drive syndrome. I don't know what to call it. We got to give this a name. Because in the first drive, the Bills usually let the opposing team just kind of have their way. They did it, this past week against Washington. They did it against the Raiders. They do it all the time. Still, he would, this fan, I guess, would turn around and be like, how's that 5th round pick look now? And I'm like, well, I can't really say anything because he's throwing darts out there. He had a really nice play to Curtis Samuel over Christian Benford as well. It looked great. But that guy left early. That guy didn't stay for the whole game. And my 5th round pick remarks were unanswered for much of the second half. Just a dominating performance by the Bills. I mean, it's nice to see that they can still blow teams out like that. I mean, of course, the level of your opponent comes into play, but it's nice to see. I mean, 37-3, like, the game is essentially just a party. And if you're Washington, I feel bad. If you're a Washington fan, this is going to come across as mean, okay? But it's not mean. This is the truth, and the truth hurts. Washington found out that they are total frauds, like complete frauds. How do I know that? Because, well, did you see the game? But also, this was the Bills throughout the drought. I don't know how many 2-0 starts the Bills had, or where they're like, hey, we're 2-1 or 3-2 or whatever. And then New England comes into your building and beats the piss out of you. And just totally humbles you. And you're like, oh, okay, we're not there yet. That's exactly what just happened to Washington. I'm not saying Washington can't be good or will never be good. They're not ready. They are not ready for a team the caliber of the Bills. It's just the truth. And the truth hurts, like I said. Anyway, I don't really want to spend too much time talking about that game. I mean, what more is there to be said? I've spent 6 minutes talking about it already. I don't want to spend too much more. Just, dominating performance, especially by the Bills' defense. 9 sacks, 5 turnovers. Terrell Bernard, AFC Defensive Player of the Week with 2 sacks, a pick, a fumble recovery. The only other linebackers to do that. I don't remember if this is like since when or whatever, but the only other 2 linebackers to do that anytime recently are James Harrison and Brian Urlacher. So, great company there. It's kind of weird that, I don't want to say, I guess weird maybe isn't the word, but it's interesting how Terrell Bernard fits at middle linebacker right now. This is not a slam on Tremaine Edmonds at all, but I saw this out there a lot on Twitter this past week. It really, I agree, it feels like Terrell Bernard already has like more memorable moments or a more memorable game than Tremaine Edmonds ever had, really, as a Bill. And that's not a slam on Tremaine. It really isn't. It's me being excited about Terrell Bernard. It's funny how we went through this middle linebacker rotation in the preseason. Bernard was obviously out with injury. But we're like, oh, A.J. Klein, maybe Terrell Dodson. I think it's going to be Dodson. Nope, it's Bernard, and it's not even close. He's not looking back. Hopefully that, this stretch of play really continues for him because it's exciting. We thought that was going to be the Bills' biggest hole on defense, and he's been fantastic. The whole defense has been fantastic. Leonard Floyd had a couple of sacks. What a pickup he has been. Ed Oliver's been very good. AJ Epinesa had a sack and a pick 6. Finally the athleticism for Epinesa. Finally. Love that. I don't want to say that he was trending towards a bust or anything. He was a second-round pick. I don't think anybody really expected him to become a Hall of Famer or something, but it's really nice to see him have his moment. That was a outstanding athletic play on the interception, and then he takes it back for 6. Really fun moment for him, obviously. Fun moment for Bills fans, for everybody, really. Everybody got in on the action. Bernard had a pick. Trey White had a pick. Bernard had the fumble recovery as well. Epinesa had the pick. Who had the 4th one? Dude, I'm struggling to even remember. Micah Hyde. Nice job. Anyway, we move forward. It is Dolphins week. We've been talking about this game, or I've been mentioning it a little bit for I feel like 3 or 4 consecutive weeks now, obviously. But we are here. And what are the Dolphins doing? They're only coming off a 70-point performance where they scored 10 touchdowns. That doesn't happen every year. It doesn't happen every decade. It doesn't happen every half century, really. What can you knock them for? What can you knock Miami for right now? They're 3-0. I feel like they're the only undefeated team in the AFC. I feel like you kind of just, if you were ranking AFC teams, you pretty much just have to rank them number 1. I think you do. Just because, they just riled up what was the total yardage? 726 yards, 376 passing, 350 rushing. Are you kidding? You could be like, oh, well, they've given up a lot of yards on defense too. I know. But when you're scoring at the rate they are, 70's not realistic to happen every week. Like if you think that is like a regular game, that's just call that like some sort of regression. There's still like even on an average day, I guess I'm mumbling here and I don't mean to, but like let's come back down to earth with like 42, and even that is obviously super impressive. You're just not gonna like they're probably a certain amount of points over expected is what I mean, because Denver probably. I really haven't watched too much of the game. I've seen all the highlights, obviously. Denver gave up. And when you give up, that is going to make the other team look like the best team of all time. But Denver had like completely thrown in the towel. They were credited with like 25 missed tackles. And that is not really to take away from what Miami did, okay? So if you're a Miami fan watching this, I am not trashing your team at all. But I mean, scoring 70 points is just not going to happen all the time. You know, anointing this the best offense of all time. You know, that's the best, one of the best offensive performances of all time. Might be the best offensive performance of all time. You don't want your Super Bowl to be in week 3. I guess is what I'm saying. You know, you beat New England by 7. You beat the Chargers by 2. New England had a really good look at tying that. The Chargers game, I mean, that really could have gone either way. The defense was bad, right? You couldn't stop the run. You allowed 30 first downs. Like that could have went either way. But good, you know what happens? Good teams win those games. So yeah, I think Miami's a good team. I think losing to Miami would be a good loss for the Bills. Not a good loss, but like either way here is like, oh, well, that's an acceptable loss, I feel like, for either team. The difference is with the Bills, you know, I'm not even getting down to like the manner in which it happens, because like the Bills loss to the Jets is totally unacceptable. If you had told me before the game the Bills are going to lose, I'd be like, well, it's probably acceptable. But given the circumstances that unfolded within the game, totally unacceptable. I'm just looking at it pregame on the surface. If the Bills lost to Miami, I'd be like, they played us really tough last year. They beat us once. The other 2 games were decided. All the games were decided by 3 or fewer points, right? So yeah, that's not shocking that they would lose to Miami. The difference is Miami's 3-0 and you're 2-1. So if Miami wins and you lose, you are 2 games behind them. They are 4-0 and you are 2-2, and you have to be 3 games better than them the rest of the way. And you only get to play them once, and you're 0-2 in the division. I think Miami becomes a significant favorite to win the division if they win this game. And, you know, that isn't, you know, without knowing what could happen the rest of the way, whether Tua gets injured or Hill or Waddle or whatever. Although they just scored the 70 points without Jalen Waddle. He is going to be back this weekend, so they'll be firing on all cylinders for sure. How can I tell you I'm not impressed? They scored 10 touchdowns in one game. They amassed over 700 yards. It's a tall task for anybody. I think the Bills are a tall task for Miami, though, too. There's certain pieces missing on each side. I think Jalen Phillips is a loss for Miami. I think he's a really young, maybe not even up and coming, maybe a young pass rusher that's arrived already. So him missing is advantageous to the Bills. They obviously still have Bradley Chubb and, of course, Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins is fantastic. I trust the Bills' interior, the Bills' improved interior with Torrance, Morse, of course, the mainstay, and Connor McGovern. I trust them. What worries me about Christian Wilkins the most is the edge that he plays with, the personality that he plays with. He's a bit of a jerk out there, and that's obviously intentional. And he can get under, Mitch Morse took a 15-yard penalty, I think, against him last year. Like, Mitch Morse, seems like the most level-headed guy, took a penalty because of Christian Wilkins last year. He gets under Josh's skin all the time. They say they respect each other. Maybe they do, but they do not get along, you know, within the confines of that field, for sure. So I'll certainly be watching that. I think the Bills have the advantage on offense when they're on offense. I think the biggest matchups of the game come down to when the Dolphins are on offense. I think both sides. So it's the Bills D-line versus the Dolphins O-line. Dolphins could be down. I'm not sure. I would guess that Connor Williams and Terron Armstead are going to play. I'm not certain of that. If Terron Armstead doesn't play, that's advantage Bills, because the Bills' D-line has been remarkably improved from last year, from years past, in fact, and they're, obviously getting after the quarterback. So, the fact that they could be without their left tackle and their center, like that, could be a big advantage for the Bills. That said, Tua is getting rid of the ball at like an alarmingly quick rate. Mike McDaniel, much to his credit, building that team or building that offense, calling the plays, knowing that his chances at the playoffs, his chances at a title, ride or die on Tua's health. So, love the play designs, love the all that. The time to throw from Tua is impressive as well. And when you have lightning fast receivers like Waddle and Hill that can get open in the blink of an eye, that obviously really helps as well. Like Tyreek Hill had how many yards last week? I don't even know. It was 150 or 170 or something. And there's a total backstory to like Mostert and Devin Achane with 4 touchdowns each. Like I don't expect the Dolphins to run the ball as effectively this week as they did last week. Of course, how do you put that up again? The Bills only allowed 105 rushing yards last week, 55 the week before. They allowed 2 big runs to Breece Hall. And Mostert has that speed. Achane has that speed as well. So they could be susceptible to big runs, and maybe part of that plays into the inexperience of middle linebacker from Bernard, not having the surefire safety back there with Jordan Poyer. He's not going to play. That's a loss for the Bills. The thing with Poyer, I feel like, is that he's trustworthy and responsible. I think the biggest thing you're maybe losing is that plus the pre-snap communication. It remains to be seen. I believe Taylor Rapp will step in. Maybe it's Damar Hamlin for Poyer. I think the biggest thing you're losing is that pre-snap communication, and Poyer, this I don't know. Let me know if this makes sense. I don't think he chases the play. There's that whole thing that McDermott likes to talk about, the 111th. Just do what I ask of you on this play and let it work. Poyer, surefire tackler, certainly willing to go tackle somebody, but knows his responsibility in each formation, in each play call, and does it, performs it. Would Rapp or Hamlin chase the play a little bit? Maybe. Could that get them beat over the top by a Waddle, a Hill? Of course. Could that create some type of run fit that Miami exploits? Yeah. Sure. That's where the Bills are disadvantaged, I think, is, not having Poyer and the Miami receivers, because I think, I don't know how you want to rank these. Here I am ranking again. Commanders fans got really fired up about me ranking their D-line behind the Jets D-line. The top 3 receiver duos in the league are Miami, in no order, Miami, Philly, and Cincinnati. I don't think it's even close. I think it's not, straight up not debatable. So, you got one of those coming into your building this week. I'm really not sure what to expect, because the Bills have been so impressive on defense. They've allowed only 35 points. 6 of those were on special teams, so the defense has only allowed 29 points. They've only allowed 2 touchdowns, 1 to Garrett Wilson and 1 to Devontae Adams, like 2 very good players. But guess who's coming in this week? 2 very good players. It's time to pick. I don't know. Because Miami's undefeated, I'm going to pick Miami. Hate me if you want. 29-26 Dolphins. Guys, hit me up on Twitter, X, my YouTube username and Twitter handle are the same. Enjoy your weekend. As always, above all else, go Bills.